So first of all, I want to give my thanks and appreciation to Sheila, to Laura, to everybody who's been involved with the amazing transformation that we've had with the Lundgren Center in the last many years we've been in existence. And I think particularly this event. So for those of you who don't know, and I think that's most of you weren't not here, when this event used to be off campus, used to be up in the, some fancy hotel up in the foothills of Tucson. One time we had it in San Francisco, trying to change it up. And we were primarily targeting, the industry. So we were trying to get, all the executives from Macy's and from Bloomingdale's and from Walmart and from Target and from Costco and all these different retailers and all their suppliers, from technology to supply chain, to come and see and listen to other CEOs of the industry speak. That's what it was all about. And I always said, yeah, we got to have like 25 or 30 students, as many as we possibly can. But, there was like a 40-minute drive. You guys were still in class. We were demanding too much to get enough attendance here. And so it was great. It served its purpose. But this is so much better because this is really about you. I mean, what I really want is I want you to be exposed to all of these industry icons that we have, these industry leaders, people who've made the decisions to choose our industry, like many of you will eventually, hopefully do. So I think this is so much better, and I want to thank our team for helping us evolve and get to the place that we are today, and from here we'll just build. So that's a little bit on the conference. I was asked to try to, give you some insights about what would be some perhaps good advice for those of you who might seek a career in retail or anywhere else for that matter. Because to me, and I always said, it wasn't about you all coming to work for one of my former companies. It was hopefully to get you excited and let you understand about the opportunities within the industry. That's what I was really trying to do. But if you choose another industry, another place, that's okay. That's okay too, because my interest is in you and your success in the future, wherever that might be. So I wanted to give you some of those lessons. But honestly, some of you know when I get up on stage, I can just go. I mean, I can just keep going and talk, and then and then next thing you know, this will be over. And then the other speakers will never have had a chance to talk. So I engaged a few students to help keep me on track. So I asked some students to help me with some questions first that I will hopefully reflect on and keep us on this schedule. So the first question from the first student is what? I can't hear you, Juliet. Yeah, it's a little louder. I think it's not you. I think it's the mic. Can you hear me in the back? Now I can. Yes. Good. Now we got you, Juliet. Juliet, you're our guinea pig. You're our first one. So this is going to be good for everybody behind you. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Juliet, and lesson 1 is interview with as many companies as possible. Be persistent, stay positive, and pay attention to the people you meet.
All right, excellent. So the first bullet point here is when I was your age, I was, trying to figure out how to get a new car. I mean, that was my sort of life ambition. I had a 10-year-old Volkswagen Beetle that was falling apart. You could start it with a butter knife. And so my fraternity brothers would steal it all the time, when they go out on a beer run or whatever. And I was like, where's my car? And it was gone. And so all I wanted when I graduated was a new car. And so my interest, therefore, was to interview with as many companies as I possibly could and take the highest paid job. That was my sort of ambition. I was pretty shallow at that point. And so I did interview with many. I was very persistent, and I would encourage you all to do the same. I was only allowed 6 interviews because you'd only see so many. So many companies were coming, and there was many more students who wanted to interview. So I got my 6 interviews, but I wanted more. So I would literally follow people to their car on the way to after the interview. Excuse me. My name's Terry Lundgren, and I couldn't get on your interview schedule, but I'd really love to have you just look at my resume. And I want to make sure they didn't know I was trying to rob them or anything. But they would often take my resume, and I got calls back. And I got called back from many of those. And long story short, I ended up getting more than the 6 offers, since I was really in a lucky position. I told Xerox I was going to take the job because they were the highest paying job. And again, my motivation was I needed a new car. The most money was all for me. And but I took a second interview with Bullock's department store in Los Angeles because they were in Los Angeles. They were going to pay for my plane ticket to go to LA. And I thought, let's do it on a Friday. I'll spend the weekend there, you know, and meet up with my friends, you know, from where I grew up in Southern California, and this will all be great. But I already got my job. And so I went there, and to my surprise, I met a lot of really great people, and I ended up going to work there. So the message here is get as many interviews as you possibly can and pay attention to the people you meet, because the people that I met at Bullock's department stores, I felt like I could look up and say, I might be able to see myself with this company in the future. I can relate to these people. I respect these individuals who I'm meeting with here. They're paying attention to me. I'm taking that job. They paid me less money than Xerox, but I took that job and it ended up being a good long-term decision. Next question.
My name is Natalie Gonzalez, and lesson 2, bloom where you are planted.
Natalie, thank you. Okay, so when I got in that job, I was in there for a few minutes. Like everybody else, I joined the executive training program, and it was me and I was one of 24 people, and I was a little intimidated. I mentioned this to the class that I was in yesterday. I was a little intimidated because 12 of the 24 were MBAs, and I was an undergrad, and I was a little kind of intimidated about how I was going to stand out. And about 3 months into the job, one of the guys that really had an impact on me was that college recruiter who stayed with me and convinced me to come work for Bullock's for less money. And so I went to him and I said, you know, I think I'm being underutilized. I'm just doing this manual transfer work, and I think I could be doing more. I'm a college graduate from the University of Arizona. You know, like, I'm 22. What do I know? And so he said, you know what? He said, you're doing that job because somebody has to do it. If it wasn't important, it wasn't necessary, they wouldn't be making you do busy work. That job needs to be done. Why don't, instead of you whining about the work you're doing, why don't you actually figure out how to do that job better, more effectively? Do it better than anybody's ever done that job before. How about that? Why don't you apply your creativity and your thought process to doing that job better than anyone's ever imagined doing that job in the past? And maybe then you'll get noticed, and people will appreciate you, and things will happen from there. That's exactly what happened, and I refer to that as bloom where you are planted. And it's a message that I give my own employees, my former employees, all the time. Bloom where you are planted. Because if you take that point of view, that mentality, any job that you have, do it better than anybody's ever done it in the past, that's your advantage. And eventually, by the way, you might supervise that job if you get promoted. And you will now know if there's a slacker in that position or if somebody's really being creative and really working hard at it. So bloom where you're planted became a real mantra for me, and I applied that in every job that I had, particularly for the first 5 years of my career, and it really paid off. So don't look over your shoulder looking for the next thing. Focus on the job you're in and do it better than anybody's ever done it before. Next question.
Hello, my name is Sebastian, and this is lesson number 3. Mentors can be found anywhere, even in the lamp business.
So you guys are like, what is that? And so I eventually got put into my first buying assignment when I was about 25, and it was like a little, kind of a odd job, I thought, but it was lamps. I was the buyer of lamps at Bullock's department store. Not exactly the most fashionable position. I was like, what about men's sportswear? What about, something like, no, lamps, you're going to lamps. And so I got into this job in lamps, and so I asked my boss, I said, so tell me everything about I need to know. I don't know anything about lamps other than I have one at home, but tell me everything I should know. who are my most promising suppliers, who should I talk to? And he gave me a sort of an overview. He said, look, you've got like 30, of your suppliers. He said, but honestly, these 5 probably have the most potential. He said, so why don't you go meet with them, talk with them, learn from them, and see, if you can, figure out how to grow this business. And I did that. I think 2 of them were in LA where I was based, and 3 of them were in New York. And I went to New York, and I talked with all of them. And they were all like, interested in selling their product to me and teaching me about their business and the like, because of course that was good for them. But one of them stood out, and his name was Cy Stewart. And I'll never, and he just became such an inspiration to me, because this guy took me under his wing, and he said, let me tell you something. He said, this is my business, this is what I do, and I basically make, a really good looking, inexpensive lamps, that are going to be your baseline business over here. He said, but that's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about the high-end business, which you don't have in your assortment. I don't make these lamps, but you need to go talk to this company, and this company. They've never sold you before, but you need to convince them to sell you. You know why? Because your customers need to have a comparison. They need to see this, $350 table lamp here, and be able to look at this beautiful piece of art lamp, so that you can sell these lamps of mine, that are $75. They kind of look like them. And he used to say, they're exactly the same quality. They were not the same quality. I mean, definitely not the same quality. But he was passionate about, having this sort of what he called an umbrella strategy. So he basically taught me how to sell the primary parts of my assortment by having an elevated assortment to compare to on this floor. And long story short, in today's dollars, in 1 year, we took the business of lamps from $10 million to $15 million in 1 year. And, I look like a hero. But it was because of this gentleman who took me under his wing and mentored me. And I never would have thought I would find a mentor in the lamp business, in the lamp industry. But I did, and I kept seeking out people like this along my career to get advice and to learn from. And that was one of my early examples of where it really worked for me, worked for the company, worked for him, because I sold more of his lamps as well. And it was a win-win relationship that lasted for decades beyond that. After I moved out of lamps, that relationship with he and me lasted for decades. Next question.
Hi Terry, my name is Ray, and the next lesson is be curious, be a sponge.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. And it is true for all of us. So while I was in that lamp business, I remember my boss just wanted me to sell more lamps, but my boss's boss had a bigger picture for me, and he said, "What are you going to do?" Now I'm into my second or third trip to New York. He said, so he said, give me your pre-trip agenda. So he wanted me to make sure that when I wasn't just going to go to New York, I was going to go to New York with a plan. What was my plan? What was my objective? Who was I going to meet with? What was my goal with each meeting? How was I going to take this business from here to here with that particular supplier? And how was I going to take my business from here to here with this particular? So it was a pre-trip agenda, if you will, that we had to create so that we were productive on our trip. And then afterwards, he said, and I want to have a post-market recap when you're done. When you get back, I want you to look against those objectives, see how you did, and then tell me how you did afterwards. And he said, and my bosses, but my boss just wanted me just to sell more lamps. My boss's boss was this guy who had this bigger vision for the trip analysis and all of that. But he also said, let me see your calendar, let me see what you're doing. And I had every minute filled of every day, all the way through dinners, with vendors and suppliers, from starting at 7 o'clock in the morning, ending at 10 o'clock at night. Every day I was in New York, I was going boom, 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 boom. And he said, when are you going to the Museum of Modern Art? I said, what? And he said, when are you going to the Metropolitan Museum? I said, what are you talking about? What are those? And he said, you are such a narrow person. He said, you need to expand your horizons. He said, I want you to take 1 hour out of day one and 1 hour out of day three, and I want you to go learn about something other than your business that you're in right at this moment. And you'll become a better, more rounded buyer, merchant, executives over time by having a more curious approach to your life rather than just business. And I couldn't believe he was asking me to do that. And I kept that lesson in my brain and used it for my people that worked for me as well. About, this is great, you're doing a fantastic job. What else are you doing to expand your knowledge? Be curious. Be a sponge. Learn from everyone you can. Learn from everything you can. Expose yourself to things that you're not necessarily comfortable with, but you might learn something from. And that became really helpful, again, to me along my career path. Next question.
Hi, my name is Alyssa, and lesson number 5 is share the credit.
Share the credit. So true. There's a saying that says there are many fathers and mothers of success, few of failures. And so when there's a success story out there, people are quick to want to take credit, for it, but the bosses often don't give it. And I have found that even, I'll tell you a quick story. I told it in my class yesterday, or it wasn't my class, Kathleen's class. She graciously invited me to attend her class, and we had some Q&A. And so the question, comes back to a point where I had an executive. This is later on in my career. Now, we're making a decision to change hundreds of department stores that were called everything from Foley's in Texas to Filene's in Boston to Marshall Field's in Chicago to the Macy's name, so we could be the first national fashion retailer that sold brands like Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein and La Mer and Bobby Brown. And we were to be the first one to have a nationwide footprint of all these fashion brands. And that was the vision and what we wanted to accomplish. And it was controversial to change. These names had been around for 100 years, these department stores in these cities. So no one likes change in their cities, right? They didn't want to change. They'd rather stay the same. Of course they would. My belief was the same wasn't working. So I wanted to take a chance with a big change. And there's many other bigger changes than we did, but other than that one. But this one is a good marker to make a point. I had a person, my chief financial officer, who was the smartest person in the room. She was smarter than I was. I worked really hard. She worked harder. She was unbelievable, incredibly respected in the industry. She was actually rated #1 in the United States in the Fortune 500. Not retail, Fortune 500 companies, all companies. She was #1 chief financial officer. So she was awesome. She was also, and I tell her this to her face, a pain in the ass. I got to tell you, she was so difficult. I had such a hard time with her. And we had arguments all the time. And it really upset me because she was right most of the time, and so I had to, eat crow. But we went around the room and said, okay, everybody, we had this conversation about changing these names to the Macy's name. You agree? Yeah. You agree? You agree? You agree? And she's like, yeah, okay, yeah. And I was like, okay, she doesn't agree. And so I said, okay, everybody, break. We're going to make this announcement tomorrow. Karen, come here. Karen, come here. We got to huddle over here in my office. What is going on? I said, we've been talking about this idea for months. Are you on board or not? And she said, well, it's a big risk, and I'm worried about it, and I don't think it's right in certain cities. Maybe it's right in others, but not in this and that. And we went back and forth. And her point was valid. This was a risk, no question about it. And her job was to protect me and our company from taking risks that were going to ruin the company. So she was doing her job. But I said, listen, we've been down this path. I don't like where we're headed. And we're headed in the same direction that's not getting us results. This has a chance. It is a risk, but it has a big chance of success if we're right. I need you to walk out this door and embrace the idea as if it was your idea. And I know you don't fully agree with it, but I need you to own it because you have too much respect in this organization. And without you, I can't sell it. I need you. I need you to own it. And she said, you're right. I will own it. We shook on it. We walked out. She owned the decision. 6 months later, it was a huge success. We had a huge win. We killed it. For the next 5 years, we grew by $1 billion a year in top-line sales without adding any stores and double-digit earnings increase. That was only one reason. There was lots of other reasons, but that was an important one. We couldn't do it without that. She owned it. And she was at the end. I'll never forget, we're at a big session. I've got all the executives, and we've got 1,000 people in the audience. All our people were celebrating. We're talking about how great things are. And she's like, I'm so happy I had that idea. And I'm going, what? and I was like, you're right. That was a great idea, and I'm glad we did it, you know? And shared that success with her. And I shared that success with the team. I shared that success with everyone. And in doing that, everybody owned it. Everybody got credit. And we were all much more successful as a result of that, not for that idea, but for ideas in the future. So share the success. And I had a sign in my office that said, there's no limit to what you can accomplish as long as you don't care who gets the credit. And I live by that statement.